Please welcome Mr. Mick Blore.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So, in the infamous words of Monty Python, and now for something completely different. So, as you've heard, my name is Mick, and wolves may seem to be a bit of a strange name to find in a conference like this, but we liked it, so we chose it as the name for our agency. We're basically a multidisciplinary brand agency, so think of us as the brand strategists or consultants of old, brought together, but we're also the kind of people who like to get our hands dirty, and we take responsibility too. And perhaps that helped a little bit towards coming up with the line, "Let's Plastic Responsibly." We specialize in communications, insight strategy, advertising, production, and media. We're also the lead communications agency for Safripol, so all the work you've been seeing is ours, but not all of that is what we do. We have some other clients that we've worked with successfully over the years, both from a brand and from a sustainability or social good point of view. So we have a passion for all things sustainability through this process with Safripol and some of the other businesses that we've helped with sustainability strategies. Raymond Ackerman once said that doing good is good business, and we agree completely. And under the current environmental spotlight, it's never been more true, or needed and prevalent as it is today. But the research supports us as well. People are more likely to do business or buy products from companies that are actively involved in their communities and are doing something about social and environmental issues. This is proved time and time again in research. People are more likely to do business with you if you are responsible about social and environmental issues. So we always say give people a reason to love you beyond just who you are and what you do. And one should always think about that from a company perspective. Year after year, we're still impressed by the results you get from this. We ran a small campaign for Safripol this last December where people could bring in their old plastic toys sitting in the cupboards before the kids got the new ones for Christmas, and Safripol then refurbished them and gave them to underprivileged communities. And the response from the public was amazing. In fact, we even got people wishing Safripol Happy New Year when the time rolled around, which I've never had before, so that was very interesting. But let's get to why we're here, the social war on plastics. So the movement against plastics in all forms is exploding, and even though it's largely uneducated, it's been given credibility by major CEOs, celebrities, and most dangerously, the social public. It's influencing corporates, customers, investors, and stakeholders. So while you may think, why am I talking to you about communications in this sense? The reason is that communications can change the way perceptions happen out in the world. Perceptions are reality. They're a reality for your business because that's what people believe. People believe that plastic is the most damaging thing to the environment. But as we've just seen, it's not. We've had situations where people have asked for discounts on their shares in companies because of the plastic problem. Or saying, are you going to be okay because are you going to go out of business? Because when they ban single-use plastics, you're not going to be in business anymore. And companies are actually starting to suffer, and they're seeing that on their bottom line. So part of becoming sustainable is to face the issue head-on and take responsibility. Plastic has become an umbrella term. So people are not breaking it down. People are not talking about the individual plastics. There's a war on plastic, full stop. And what we've seen today from the likes of Dr. Vashni and Dr. Philippa, everyone's a doctor, I must go and get a doctorate. What we've seen is that conversation is all about plastic, and the general public are driving that conversation. So like it or not, whether we're involved in plastic bottles or straws or bags or packaging, if you and your individual company don't do that, it doesn't matter. The war on plastic is the war on plastic, and it will come to your door sooner or later. So we've got to reframe the issues around plastic. The challenge is the negative rhetoric. So there's a current zeitgeist, there's the visibility of packaging, there's a rise of talk on social media, and a lot of talk around over-packaging. The plastic rhetoric we see out in the world, lifestyle of plastics, damage to animals and the environment, over-packaging, people challenging companies. These are the kind of pictures we see all the time. This was a search for glass factory pollution, and you can see that 90% of the results are all about plastic pollution. Just a normal Google search. So plastic's not necessarily the issue. It's how people manage packaging that is, and of course the fact that it's visible. So what's the reality? The reality is that there are a lot of unspoken truths around plastic which we're not talking about, and we need to talk about together. One is the role that plastic plays in people's lives. There are a lot of benefits, and it seriously improves people's lives in a lot of ways. Plastic has a value, as we've seen. It can be collected. It can stimulate the economy. SEPRO and Plastics SA released an article, I read it on IOL about 2 days ago, where they said the plastics industry has contributed in 2019 over 2 billion rand to the South African economy. They collected 500,000 tons of packaging, and over 350,000 tons of that was converted to raw materials for production in other areas. That being said, we produced 1.8 million tons as a country over the same period, so a lot of room to go, but there is good news amongst the bad. So what's being said and what's the real feeling out there? So conversation around plastic momentum is building. What you see here is sort of a simple but complex graph. It's about 11 months, but what it's really telling us is that at any time between 500,000 and 1.5 million conversations are happening around plastic on social globally all the time. All the time. What we're looking at here is the kind of mentions and posts that we're getting. So you're looking at 77 million posts on plastic. 1.8 trillion people potentially saw those posts. Now, those posts can be totally uneducated, but people are seeing it and they're believing it, and that's a big problem for us. That red line that you see there is net sentiment of minus 21%. This is global, but you don't really want any red when it comes to your company when you're measuring sentiment out in the world. So, plastic global sentiment, you're going to see some rude words. These are what people actually say on social media, so I wasn't going to change it. But you can see the red versus the green, all the negative perceptions versus the positive ones. Demographics, pretty similar. I wanted to just point out here that we often think it's sort of the millennials, etc. But the conversation between the ages of 55 and 64 globally have the highest number. That's the age group. Conversation around plastic in South Africa, it lags a bit behind, but we're still at a minus 8% negative sentiment. That's really bad, and it's going to get worse because we're still catching up. The conversations that are happening, 500,000 posts over that period around plastic and just gaining momentum. And you can see the sentiment is also very bad. Same sort of demographics. The only thing I wanted to say here was the highest number of people in South Africa is 25 to 34, and then 35 and up. So a younger audience here, but still not the young activists you think are talking about our problem. Sentiments around global plastic and health. Now we're talking about, do bottles break down in the sun, and when you drink the water, are you okay? How safe is the packaging? The sentiment, very far from the truth, is very, very negative. South Africa, same sort of thing. We're catching up fast, minus 8% there. Conversation around plastic recycling, not good. So what does the research show us? Well, it shows that I need a sip of my juice. So we took a sample. I won't go into any detail, but it was pretty much over the geographies and the age groups and the various things. I'm going to refer to boomers later. Boomers are people between the age of 54 and 72 years old. Millennials, as expected, and Generation X is 38 to 53 years old. So across the various provinces, slightly more in Gauteng. What we started to get out from this is that, and I've created this presentation long form so you can have a look at it in some detail later, but I just want to pick out some highlights for you now. 67% of the respondents in that research survey feel that they're very knowledgeable about recycling. And when you really push them, only half claim to dispose of their rubbish in the separate bins at home. And these are the people preaching. They're out there preaching you have to recycle, and they're not even doing it at home themselves. So they're helping to create this negative perception. So here are two things about the beliefs around recycling. The two I wanted to pick out for you are, I believe that manufacturers are doing far too little to help consumers be environmentally friendly. I believe that retailers are doing far too little. So the sort of swing has come on from the manufacturer of the polymers, which is way down that list, to the retailers, strategic partners, manufacturers, and there's a lot of emphasis on you to kind of meet this social expectation. Who do they think is responsible for this? They think that the governments and schools need to do it. Environmental groups, there's a lot of pressure on them simply because they're making noise, so they say, okay, well, it's your problem. But a lot of the correspondents feel that companies who make the raw materials for packaging should be responsible for an education drive around it. And here's a quick graph. The government must do so much, schools, colleges, universities, but look at number 3 and 4 in the top 5. Packaging manufacturers, supermarkets, fast food companies, and other retailers are expected to educate people about how to recycle. The current recyclers, so those boomers, the elder group that I was talking about, recycle as much as they possibly can. But you know, the females and millennials, sorry to break it down by gender and race, but it's how the research is conducted. They don't recycle as much, and certain people don't recycle anything. But the prominence there is between those boomers and a little bit less for sort of my age group up. You can see that plastic is considered to be the biggest recycling material at the moment. So people are doing it because of the plastic problem. Obviously, they're very aware of the packaging material perceptions, so they know the benefits of convenient storage, light on the pocket, resealable, reusable, can be recycled. They're even talking our language without realizing it. And you can see here, 100% recyclable. Paper comes in at 78%, so they're aware of that. They're aware that it's resealable. They're aware that it's reusable for other purposes in the home, and they're aware they can be recycled. Just a little graph on kind of measuring better for my health versus makes products more affordable. On the left is maintains product freshness, prevents contamination, versus is biodegradable and can be absorbed back into the soil. Interesting that they put it like this. And you can see where sort of plastic lies. You know, we write down on the better for health, which is ironically very opposite to the truth of the matter. So, effects of packaging materials in the environment. 82% of respondents believe that plastic has the most negative effects on the environment. Cardboard, paper, and glass are believed to have almost no negative effect on the environment whatsoever. What happened to that conversation around global warming? It used to be everything on social media. Now it's about the war on plastic. So what is the razor edge of marketing and communicating plastic? Why should you be communicating? Why should you have a sustainability strategy? For all the reasons I've said before. Perception is reality. Beyond that, it's going to land at every person's door who's involved in plastic at some point or another. It's been proven. And the result is an economic result. So we're talking about sustainability in terms of environmental, in terms of recycling, in terms of all sorts of things. We're not talking about economic sustainability. Companies are literally going out of business. Some are losing share value. Some are coming under suspicion from their markets and their customers because of these perceptions out in the world. It's a large job to educate those people. So it's imperative to have those sustainability strategies in place. So that's what I've just said here. The power of social media alone has the ability to change the trajectory of a company and its sales, virtually overnight. So what is communication success? It's when you're doing something right, you need to talk about it, but you need to be careful about how you talk about it. We were very careful about how we went out and talked about plastic responsibly, because we didn't want to say something like plastic is good right off the bat, because all the warriors will stand up and say, oh no, it's not, and attack you straight away. So one's got to think about these things carefully. You've got to make sustainability a core of your company, messaging and advertising. Let's be honest, going forward the next 10, 20 years, if your sustainability strategy isn't at the core of the business, will your business be sustainable? And then you obviously got to understand how to manage and navigate the inevitable backlash that you will get when you go out and stand up. I love this lady. She does plasticfreejuly.org. She's actually a very difficult person. But she says you must walk away from all plastic for the full month of July for the environment. All plastic. Walk away from it. So we said, okay, well, give me your phone, because that's 40% plastic. Hand over your car, your laptop. Give us your containers that are keeping your food fresh. Take that frozen milk out of the freezer, which is prolonging its life. Give us that. She's got 1 million followers. She's growing exponentially. 1 million people are saying, let's ban all plastics. Let's ban all single-use plastics. They have no idea what they're talking about. but 1 million people are listening. So we need to support this war on plastic and put it where it actually needs to be focused. It should really be called the war on plastic pollution. We should change that narrative because it's about overpackaging, it's about littering, pollution, dumping, a lack of recycling. And then we need to extol the solutions, which are to reduce, reuse, repurpose, recycle. Remember the inverted pyramid from Dr. Vashni. So the opportunity is to champion the good around plastic, getting people to understand the things that plastic's in, the meaningful role it plays in people's lives, how to go about recycling, and obviously getting people to reuse as much as possible. And other industries have faced similar crises, shall we say, the alcoholic industry. I recently did a lot of work with Diageo, who does the likes of Johnny Walker, etc., in terms of brands. And they spend up to 20% of their entire marketing budget just doing responsible drinking campaigns. Over and above, they sponsor all the responsible drinking people because that's their problem, and that's their way of overcoming their problem. And it's been very successful to a large degree. Just 2 examples, Coca-Cola. They've had huge public backlash around sort of plastic bottles, and they've been named the worst offender a couple of years running. But they've taken responsibility and they address the issues publicly. So that's one way to do it. I would argue, not necessarily for Coca-Cola, but for people who only address the issues, the problem is when you have other issues, people jump on the bandwagon because they're used to attacking you. So they had a little bit of a misstep where they had a training exercise and there was a slide in there that said, try to be less white. And Social woke up and they said, abandon Coke and switch to Pepsi. And I'd love to know what the sales results from that little social expedition was. Adidas got significant social media backlash, so they focused on social good and spectaculars. They created shoes made out of ocean plastic. And when I say shoes, in their first year, they made something like 16 dozen pairs. Nothing, absolutely nothing at all. But when you go back to the sentiment globally, Adidas is seen as one of the most responsible, sustainable, environmental companies on the web. Not true at all, but they refocused everybody. Then they took plastic and they made a football field out of it. That's the little picture on the right there. And they spoke about this football field that they created. Honestly, people can't sing their praises highly enough. So reframe the issue. So how do you build communication messaging? So we're here for results and solutions as well. We've got to rewire some thinking. So I won't read through all of these because it'll take a long time, but we all know this. You know, plastic obviously is in packaging. There's a lot of benefits from that. It's in transportation. A lot of people don't realize this. Plastics and energy efficiency, plastic in sports, plastics in medicine. I mean, think about where we would be without plastic over the COVID period. It's just crazy. Plastics in electronics. Here's the point. People have passions. These passions outweigh anything else going on in their lives. You may be an avid cyclist. That is a passion of yours. When you realize how much plastic is in cycling, you've got to think differently. So if we play to people's passion points, get them to understand and get them to support the right kind of plastics, we'll have won this race without having to take on the war itself. See what I did with the cycling and the race, and then I went back to war because that was my opening. So it's true to say that plastic seriously improves people's lives, and that's why this campaign that we've developed is not so much a campaign. When we sat down with Safripol, we said, we're going to present something to you, but it's not just for you. And they were like, well, we're paying you, so why not? And we were like, well, because if we create a movement and we can get our partners, strategic partners, retailers, other people involved, we can create a war cry. This cannot be done in silos. It has to be done together. We've heard all day, today and yesterday, about how many facets there are to getting towards a solution for the plastic problem. So many things, and starting with the person at home, separating its source. You know, so it's going to be a journey. So what do you do as a company in the meantime to mitigate risk while you're on that journey. Absolutely, you have to be involved. Absolutely, you have to be doing the right things. You have to have your sustainability strategy. But you also need to be communicating in such a way that people love you beyond just the product you sell. That will mitigate the risk to you financially. So Let's Plastic Responsibly became something that we can make a responsibility more than just a behavior and make it a cause and a positive societal role. So you might ask me, what is plastic responsibly? So we just define it very simply. It's quite, as I say, a very simplistic view of it, but responsible plastic is any plastic that is used, handled, and managed responsibly, leading to repurposing, reuse, recycling, or ultimately the correct and safe disposal of it. And the antithesis of that, obviously, is irresponsible plastic is not handled or managed responsibly, which a lot of it is. In fact, this is our biggest problem. I just love the fact that Woolworths peels an orange and then wraps it in plastic and puts it on the shelves for you. I mean, if only nature could come up with a way to just protect and package it itself. How am I doing for time? My team? I've got 50 minutes left. Kat, where are you? You owe me 6 beers. Right, so in short, these 2 days and the months to follow are about turning our discussions into actionable strategies and projects. We want to use talk, yes, we've spoken a lot, but we need to galvanize action out of this. So it's our mandate to act and to lead tangible change and to communicate it. I can't stress this enough. You can be deeply involved in responsible, sustainable programs, initiatives. If the public doesn't know, it doesn't exist. Why would Safripol, as a mainly a B2B, business-to-business enterprise, bring on a communications agency who tells them to go and talk to the public? It's not going to increase their sales. So like the CEO says, well, you know, what are you doing? Fortunately, Safripol has a very fantastic CEO. Nico, that was for you. But it's the truth. But what I'm trying to illustrate here is that if we don't take the conversation to the people who are having the conversation, that negative perception persists. And if the negative perception persists, and now that COVID is sort of becoming a seasonal, manageable, hopefully treatable thing, we're going to see a resurgence of this plastic war. We're going to see a resurgence of green talk, because health is the issue on people's minds now. So it's not like plastic is necessarily destroying the environment, but yes, it's there. Health is the importance. You know what one of the biggest pollution factors on our beaches and in our oceans is right now? Those blue plastic masks that have got plastic in them. People are not talking about that. You've got a couple of environmentalists jumping on and a couple of activists starting to talk about it, but because essentially they keep you safe and they're about health, the conversation isn't there yet, but it's coming. So, just to reiterate, I really feel that if we could bring our companies together from a sustainability and communications perspective and work together, that this problem could be communicated well. There's a massive job in education that needs to happen now. We have to go and tell people, and Safripol has been doing it, where plastic actually lies in their lives, because it's everywhere in your life. You interact with it every single day. We have to start telling people how to recycle. There are people who are willing to recycle, but they just have no idea how to go about it. And it's not as simple as the different colored bins. And you know, you had some initiatives where people picked up your recycling waste, and then those went bankrupt and they fell away. We've got to make it easier for people. And they look to us to take on that responsibility. So if we don't, it's to our peril. Thank you very much.